Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy, we're going to have a fun conversation today. If you're not a serious player, you may not find it as fun, but I can pretty much guarantee you it's going to be more fun than whatever the fuck is going on in Madison Square Garden right now, because I guess that's basketball. But Nick's going out without a fight so far in this one. I should set the table here before asking you how you're doing. We kind of intended to use the month of May as an opportunity to hit a little evergreen topics. We're going to use the month
Evergreen
of June.
May, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Evergreen May, and then we're going to use the month of June do some interviews with some smart people in the gambling space. In the meantime, we may
and then it's football again.
And then holy fuck, it's football again. We may rerun some of our best of. On Mondays, put some of the not best of necessarily, but put some of our
those
old
evergreen. I mean,
ones,
some of those evergreen ones we did were 3-4 years ago, and I listened to part of one.
Oh yeah, did we sound like idiots?
No, I mean we're
Which
smarter
one did you
now.
pick?
A little bit of the CLV one.
Oh, okay. Actually, that was the one I was going to listen to too. Actually, okay, we should put that in the mix for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna get with Dan. We'll put a plan together. We'll release some from. It's like. Boy, I'm dating myself. Yeah, I was going to say, do you remember this when like the Disney movies came in VHS cases, but there were those big ones,
the big white ones, yeah.
Yeah, and every once in a while, they'll be like, "Oh, Cinderella's out from the vault. You can only buy this on VHS for the summer, and then it's going away again
forever."
But I mean, literally, you can
you definitely won't be able to stream it at your fingertips on 10 different devices at the same time.
You could go find these on your own pretty easily, but we're gonna make it easy by putting them right in your RSS feed. And so just know on Mondays we're gonna post some old episodes that we thought were good, that were evergreen.
Yeah,
and Drew hit it. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna talk about a bunch of topics. If you guys have any questions, or maybe we should even post the topics a little earlier in the week. Maybe in the Discord. Sure. See if some people have some good talking points they want us to hit on, because obviously this is not for us. This is for you. Even though we enjoy it, like we aim to please. We want to answer any questions anyone has. So we'll decide on a topic here for next week right off the bat when we get off the air, and we'll post it early up so people can maybe get some questions and shit.
I like that call. Before we dive into today's evergreen, let's do some content that will age poorly, which is talk about the Derby. I gotta talk about the Derby, man. And before we go any further, we're already 3 minutes into this podcast and it's been too long. Hat tip to Mike Somich for the inspired breakdown of why Mage was the horse to beat in the Kentucky Derby in last week's pod. You know how many people in the betting space called Mage? It was one. It was Mike.
Yeah, no,
and he didn't even hedge his opinions. He was like,
I want to give
we haven't even gotten to the winner yet.
Kanish called it as a joke.
Yeah, I guess. I guess so. You don't think he just happened to pick a horse that he knew kind of that was a little bit of the smartest guys we know? Yeah,
I think he probably listens to
all right. Well,
some spot. But yeah, hat tip to Mike, and I had a weird moment. So like, I had been watching the Derby on my laptop. Because it's not like NBC just broadcasts all the other races. They don't give a shit about the other races because most of the American public doesn't either. But obviously, I was betting each race going along. I had some of Mike's tips. I had our friend the Mill. He had some tips, and I actually did. I didn't make a mint, but I did all right during the day, and it's just fun. Like every half hour, 40 minutes doing that. I was also working on some home projects, so I'm bouncing. So finally, it's like, oh, it's Derby time. I sit down. And it starts, and then the race starts, and I realize I have closed captioning on the TV.
Oh,
because I'm old. I love closed captioning. I'm like, fuck, I can't see the thing at the bottom.
Yeah, get it off.
I'm like, I'm getting it off, and then my daughter's yelling. She's like, oh, I forgot to pick horses, and she's yelling. She's like, she picked 4 and 8. She's like, 4 and 8. I picked 4 and 8. I'm like, all right, whatever. And then it gets off, and she's screaming, and they all come around the turn in a big mess.
Sure, you
and
can't
at this
see
point,
anything, yeah.
And then my son runs in, and it's a big disaster. Honestly, I'm not even thinking about my bets. And then 8 takes it, and the connect wasn't even there. Like how much money I just made, because my daughter wouldn't shut the fuck up about how excited the horse she picked randomly had won. I told you, number 8. I'm like, oh, here we go. And then obviously after that too, some of the other smart minds I talked to and some of the advice we'd gotten from Mike, I'd put together a winning try box with Mage on top and 3 horses on the bottom, and 2 of those horses were Angel and Phil. So
yeah,
it was super nice getting a try to close it. And I tweeted about it too. I was very impressed with myself for not spending any of that money on the 13th or 14th.
Oh
races.
yeah, no, you walk away at that point. Okay, so
those are good chase races if you needed it.
Final kind of hat tip, pat on the back here from Mike. And again, honestly, like if there's someone who is public facing with their handicapping for horse racing who's better than Mike from our generation, I don't know him. I don't think he exists. Honestly, I think Mike is as good as it gets when it comes to, I'm going to tell you why these are the horses that should win. And boy, oh boy, were his breakdowns sharp. We asked him for a handful of other kind of high confidence looks. Smoking Tea dominated in the third on Friday. By the way, he singled that in a pick 5 that paid 120 that paid 1,200. So well done there. Right off the bat on a Friday, getting 1,200 in pocket. I was like, okay, well, I guess we're just going to be betting big this weekend. Let's fire away. Put
the ticket right back in the machine.
Yeah. Well, no, the way it is like you have that as your voucher for all the rest of the basic.
The rest of your
the rest of the bets you want to make all day. And you know what? Secret plus EV move. Once you have a big old voucher, right? Balance. Yeah. Then it makes actually putting together your tickets a lot easier because you're not like, you don't really know how much a super is going to cost when you punch it in. Like I don't know that math, right? You don't know how much a pick 6 is going to cost when you punch it in. And so you don't want to be sitting there at the kiosk like an idiot. Like you've made your pick 6 and you're like, oh, it's 240. Now I got to like get all the money in there before like the kiosk times out and just spits out your, you got to start over and you look like an idiot, like holding up the line at the kiosk. So anyway, having the voucher was huge.
And there's probably a better way to do this. I don't know how to do it. Like, to split up, like if you hit a big ticket, like, hey, the first race you hit some big try or you hit a superfecta, God help us, maybe a big pick 3 and you have a couple thousand and it's like at the casino. What do you do when you're up at the casino? You take one of those purple chips, you put it in your pocket and say like, I'm not spending this. This is going to pay for dinner the next couple nights.
Sure.
Like it's just nice to have that. So what I'll do is you put the big voucher in, like you have a 4-figure voucher, you've done well. And then I'll make a huge bet, like whatever I want to bet with. I'll make like a $700 bet on a horse, and then cash out that $500 voucher and put it in my wallet where you have to go
this
get
is
it.
Cash now,
and then you can put that big bet into the machine again and cancel it before the race.
Yeah.
And then it just that's how I'm sure there's a better way, but that's how I always will split my vouchers up.
Nice, man.
So I can hide. You hide a little. You squirrel.
Okay.
What do you call it? There's a word for that. Your rat hole.
Rat hole. Yeah. Sure. I don't know if that's what it is, but it sounds like it to me. All right. So, yeah. And again, like so much dead on the nuts with a bunch of races on Saturday, especially the ones coming down the wire. Hat tip to our friend Mill. Also, he called Web Slinger. The 14 paid 22-1.
That was one I didn't watch.
Oh man!
So I put that one in.
God.
And I missed the race because I said I was working on a home project. I missed that race, and I came back to the computer and saw the balance and said, "Oh shit! What the fuck happened?"
Web Slinger. All right, so story time. Web Slinger was I think the 9th race on Saturday. I had a press credential through NBC because I was there to do media on Thursday and Friday. My roles and responsibilities were pretty limited, which is like it was a gift, honestly. Like I just had to be on the Matthew Berry set for 15 minutes on Thursday. I had to film a bunch of kind of like digital hits and then just promote races on Friday. That was my own choice, just to kind of go around the park and film at different locations and give people kind of the spirit of what it's like to be at Churchill Downs for Oaks Day. And so I didn't have anything to do at all on Saturday. And my favorite place to hang out on the whole track, as I was kind of exploring everything on Friday, was the Homestretch Club, which is like it's a 2-level club, bottom floor, long lines at the bar. It was all you can drink, all you can eat Friday and Saturday. Did you know that at Churchill Downs? With the ticket, it's all you can eat, all you can drink inside the grounds.
I did not. I will be there next year. Jesus. So
the food,
it's like my
the
favorite
food was
thing in sports is all
the food was terrible. The drinks were excellent. The hospitality was unmatched. But the lines for all of the bars downstairs were hugely long. Everybody, people had reserved seats at the home stretch where you're basically like right up against the rail, right where they're loading the horses, right where they're coming down for the finish line. You can see the finish line pretty well, but not perfectly. And so the home stretch club was the best. The second story of the home stretch club had like a secret bar where there was never a line. And so I was just basically like, well, I'm going to camp out here all day so I can just kind of hit that bar. It had a perfect little spot right at the end of the line where I could watch the races. And so Web Slinger in the ninth comes up, and guy next to me, he's like, you look like, I was talking and giving tips to this
giving
group.
it to a few people.
Yeah, I was talking and giving tips to this group of like kind of like teenagerish kids, not teenagers, but like 20 something kids next to me. They were picking my brain about the races, and I was like, my guy loves 14 in this one. He's going off at a huge price, but I think I had like 20 to win. It ended up being like 400 something on Web Slinger. And they were like, okay, well, we'll get 14. And the other guy next to me was like, what was that? You like 14? I'm like, yeah, cool. And he looks like he's got like a wise guy look with a little, good, cool hat and cigar and stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool. He's like, yeah, what do you like about Web Slinger? I was like, I don't really know, man. I'm just taking tips and I'm aggregating stuff from everybody else who does know. He's a closer, I guess. So it'll be a fun race. It's on turf. Turf's wide open. And so I'm just shooting the shit with this guy, super nice guy named Mark. And which is funny because Mark is also our friend Mill's first name. So a little synergy there. But anyway, so I get to talk to him. We watch the race. Web Slinger wins 22-1, comes in. Everybody's just going absolutely nuts in that section. And I'm just like an instant legend there for giving Mill's tip to all these people. And one of the guys that's like kind of
opposite of don't kill the messenger.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. So one of these guys that's sitting next to the guy I was talking to, I'm like, Jesus, that looks a lot like Dustin Pedroia. I'm like, that's like so similar. I'm like, I wonder if Pedroia, like I didn't want to like Google like is Pedroia here, but I was like, I think that's Pedroia. The guy I'm tapping with him was like, are you in this group? Like, is that Pedroia? And he's like, yeah, that's Pedroia. He loves the horse racing. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Slight background. I was a huge Red Sox fan growing up. I've lived and died with the Red Sox that broke the curse. I remember Pedroia's 2013 MVP season like it was yesterday. World Series to cap it off.
Porteous juicer.
Hey, man.
Everybody was. I don't know. I'm just trying to be on Red Sox. I hate
so so I'm like, dude, this is fucking awesome. I'm like, my dad's gonna get a kick out of this. My brother's gonna get a kick out of this. This is crazy. I saw Pedroia at the races. He stands up and he starts chatting with me. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'm just gonna play it cool. And then like we're all in a group talking. And he's like, well, yeah, that was a great hit. Who do you like for the Derby? And I'm like, well, Mage, obviously, because Forte's out and so much twisted arm so hard on the pod. And I was like, well, yeah, definitely Mage. You're going to get a great price. He could be the best horse in the field. We don't know. He's never broken. And they're like, God, you know a lot about this. And so they started picking my brain about like the other horses in the races. And what about the next two? And I'm like, well, the next one's chalk, like Cody's Wish. After that, like Mark, that one's solid. I'm like, we should probably put in like a pick 3. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, how does that work? And so I'm like describing to Pedroia and this other guy he was also a pro baseball player for the Blue Jays, Mark. And I'm like describing them like what a horizontal is, what a vertical is, like blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, that's cool. Like we have like a kiosk in our suite, but we, never figured out how to really use it. And I'm like, oh, so I'll show you how to use it. And so I'm like, nice. Now I don't have to wait in line for the kiosk. I can just go to their suite and just bang, 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 bang. So made friends with these guys. Turns out Jacoby Ellsbury was with them as well, hanging out, watching the races. And so for the entire kind of hour run up to the race itself, I was like, okay, like the holy grail of betting, as far as I could tell you, is if you can hit the superfecta in the Derby. Like everybody wants to do it. It's going to be like $1 pays like 15 grand. I
did it. I did it one year, but it was like a chalky year.
Just a chalk one, sure.
And it was like a dime. It was like I bet like 2,000 different,
of course,
options at a dime.
Yeah, the dime superfecta is fun. So the lowest you could go is $1 in the parimutuel pool at Churchill. So they're like, well, what's a superfecta? And I'm explaining it to them. I'm telling them how to build it and like going through all the options. And I'm like, okay, well, the 17 horse is kind of a hot pick. Like he's, but he's cursed. It's like, what do you guys have an opinion on curses? And they're like, we're definitely using the 17. Like, he'll break the curse. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll put him in the top. And somebody like 2 fills, and mage we had already. And so I'm like, we got to build like a pyramid. You want like a couple at the top, and then you want to put some bombs in level 3 and level 4.
You missed the 3 in the 2 hole, wasn't it?
That's what kept it off. Yeah, that's right.
I remember looking at your ticket. I'm like, this looks good.
So
where did it go wrong?
So that was one of 2 tickets I had. One I played was exactly Somich's, which missed disarm in the 4 hole. Yep. And the other was I missed fill in the 3 hole.
I've told that story to a couple people now. Because that's the other thing too. I wanted to play like a 50-cent super, and the race book I was using wouldn't let me go below $1. And I'm like, man, this is gonna get expensive. And that's when I just said, you know what, this is now a trifecta.
Honestly. I'm talking him through this.
But it's funny too because I'd spent like a long time putting together a superfecta, and I don't remember exactly what it was. It had 8 keyed to save money, and it had Angel of Envy, and it had 2 fills. There was no 11 anywhere near it. No way, shape, or form. Like, I would have, however much money I would have spent on that superfecta would have been gone. And that's what I'm glad. Like, if they'd let me bet 50 cents on it per combo, I'd put that in for sure.
Yeah.
So congrats to me for not making a bet.
So I spent an hour shooting the shit with these guys, and I'm making jokes about how like the Japanese horse, like he's probably juicing. No, they can't catch him. They're getting away with whatever, and making jokes about Jacoby Ellsbury picking the pockets of the Steinbrenners, and he was laughing. Like, I was like, okay, that's cool, man. So those guys were fucking great to hang out with, and I showed them how to do the superfecta on the kiosk. Meanwhile, their wives are like hanging out in like the suite. And I'm just getting mean mugged by all of them. Like, this motherfucker, like, I can't believe you're like encouraging this. Like, they're going to bet and lose. Like, you better be right. And I'm just getting absolutely, just daggers from the wives and girlfriends there in the suite. And we go right up to the rail. Perfect spot to watch the race. We're like right where they load them. See the break, see them come down, watch them come around the home stretch, come around the final turn, down the home stretch. Mage accelerates and takes over the lead, and it was just fucking ecstasy. I could not believe that he.
I'm gonna have to have Dan clip the part at the beginning of this where you said you had a quick story.
Did I say quick?
Ago. No, probably
no way. I said quick. No way I said quick. But yeah, ultimately, like, I don't think I could have asked the script writer. Yeah, if I had been like, hey, write a fun day at the track where like I get to meet like some childhood heroes, and then follow up with the winning pick in the Derby itself. Like, it was absolutely perfect. I would have liked the 11 race to go a little better. Yeah, well,
it
was number 5, right? Number 5 hit.
I think, yeah, but I went heavy on some tries.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever the case was, I came no balls. I made that joke about the 7th race about no balls not being a gelding, and then that horse won at 40-1. That was, I had a pick 6, 20-cent pick 6 that the other five legs hit, and the no balls didn't, and it paid $1 million. If I had like all that one and then went the rest of the way, it would have been unbelievable. Same with 2 superfecta lotto tickets. Both were missed by 1.
Spoiler, the analog to this is betting big SGP parlays. Like, it's the same thing. We've all had that where it's like, fuck, like all I had to do was hit this one race. It's always an early one too, where it's like you should never go back and look, but it's like you miss the second race of a pick 6, and then you hit like 3 long shots in a row, and you're like, I think I had that in my pick 6. And you find your tickets. Like,
damn it!
Now I'm itching
anyway,
too. And Canterbury doesn't open for like 3 more weeks, man.
It was incredibly fun. Incredibly thankful to NBC for sending me. That was just an all-time experience. I don't think I'm gonna beat that for a while, if ever, just in terms of enjoyable experiences. So super memorable. And somebody brought it up in the chat, it sounds like a good bachelor party experience. Man, dude, all you can drink. I mean, it's a lot of all you can drink, and betting on horses. Like, they pace out the day so freaking perfectly. It was really incredible. And Didn't make as much money as I could have, but it didn't matter. It was an all-time experience. So had a very, very, very fun time.
Being up at the end of any horse meet is good because it's like, honestly, for us, because we're not horse guys, we don't do all the research. Like, it's like going to the casino where you're going to play cards, or you're going to play slots or something. If you leave up, you've done well because the odds were definitely against you.
Oh yeah, no, I went with that. I was like, I'm
the best horse players in the world.
Like,
yeah, I mean, and we've heard this from people. Like, the best horse players in the world wouldn't be profitable if it weren't for the rebates. Like, of course, they need the rebates. Like, you leave any horse meet up, you're good. So the fact that and by horse meat, I don't mean those IKEA meatballs, but like you leave a track up. So yeah, I'll be spoiler alert. I'll be opening day at Canterbury for sure.
Yeah, some other I have some actual quick stories. I met I met Adam Bjorn, a guy that we've competed with in the Calcuttas a couple times. Great guy. He's opening a new book this year, and he's going to be for sure one of the best, if not the best, guest we interview in June. Want to talk to him once his product goes live in the U.S. They're basically bringing Bookmaker to onshore, which is fucking awesome. I cannot believe that they're going to pull this off, but they are. Excited to see how it goes. The Turf Club. Don't spend money on the Turf Club. It's cool. It's like a party scene. They have live music. The food is fine, but the actual getting to see the races is no bueno. It's tough. It's tough there to get a good look at the races. You can't see the paddock either, really.
That's the case at a lot of, like, there's baseball stadiums like that where it's like, hey, here's a cool area where you can barely see the field, but it costs a lot.
Yeah, I'm the fourth.
You're not there to watch the game.
The fourth level is the stakes level, and it's like a dining room that's like super uppity. Same with Millionaires Row, super uppity. Like, and everybody just kind of walks out when it's time for the race, and they stay. They stand on the rail, and you're 4 levels up. And yes, you can see everything. The view's amazing, but the vibe is very, very different there. It's a lot more stuffy and a lot less positive energy. So I highly recommend Homestretch Club of any of the opportunity, any of the places there. The First Turn Club was pretty cool on Thursday as well. They built a giant brand new building there with a huge club. And that had all you can eat, all you can drink on Thursday. I think that was the only place in the park that was like that. But anyway, it was unbelievably cool. Kentucky Derby, we can put it in the books. We'll be betting Mage to win the Preakness. And then once we see the field for the Belmont, probably going to go against him.
Yeah, we're like 10 days from the Preakness. Yeah. We'll get into that a little. We'll at least there'll at least be a tweet storm about that.
Yeah, Patrick is correct. Aaron Rodgers was at the Turf Club. Chris Pine at the Turf Club. Chris Pine was way, way smaller than you would have ever believed.
Remember that other guy spit on him and it was a really big thing on Twitter?
Yeah, I do remember that.
I don't follow the celebrity news that close, but that was really important that day.
Josh Allen was about. Josh Allen is smaller than you would have guessed. I would thought he was
every athlete
is
smaller. Than you think, except when you meet offensive linemen.
Yeah, the MVPs though, in terms of fun hang and very cool guys, were Pedroia and Ellsbury though. Those guys were awesome. All right, should we talk a little evergreen stuff finally?
Let's talk about the NFL because we're in the content game and a lot of other people are as well. And I'm seeing a ton and it's not like I don't have a bunch of outlines written for like my first thoughts on betting a lot of these markets because it is time to start thinking about stuff. And every award market, every futures market, every regular season win total, like you do need to put a certain amount of thought into it, and how you're going to pose your probabilities, or if it's an award market, to your narratives, or just how do you see this guy getting the opportunities to do the things that'll lead to the narrative. So like, hey, it's time to start prepping for that stuff. But I want to kind of take a look at it, a little more of a overarching look at just futures in general, because it's almost like the CLV argument. Like there is a bit of a, and I don't know how deep you want to get into this part of it too, but you do see people poo-pooing each other on Twitter sometimes, and that's just the nature of Twitter. But it's like, like the CLV argument. I think there is actually like good thoughts on both sides. This is more of a, why would I tie my money up for 11 months, which is a fair point, I think, for some of this stuff, because it is a long time. If you bet, when did they announce the MVP?
It was the 2 days before. It's 2 days before the Super Bowl.
It's Thursday. I think it's like the Thursday or
Thursday.
Friday before the Super Bowl. Yeah. Like you're talking pretty much February. You're making a bet in May for next February. You are going to be sitting on that fucker for a while.
That's true. And so I guess as we kind of sit here in May, early May, there are win totals markets open. There are awards markets open. There are championship markets open. There are game markets open, right? And
we don't even have the whole schedule. They've opened.
And I like, honestly, like the people that listen to this podcast, the people in the chat, absolutely, in the Deep Dive Discord, like I bet you could flip open your book right now and pick out 5 bets that are available this moment that are wildly plus EV this minute, right? And what I mean by plus EV is price will shorten between now and when that market is resolved. And particularly in the game markets, right? Like you don't even really need to look that hard. Like, oh shoot, neutral site.
Well, Bet Online had some
neutral site. Baltimore is -2.5 against Tennessee, right around a key number. You think that's going to cross 3? Yeah, fuck yeah, it is. That's off by a mile. And so I think you could realistically. What's that? Is it 6?
Should be.
Oh, I was wondering if it already moved to 6. That would have been pretty funny. But yeah, no, I mean, like you can look at markets now and capture EV if you choose to, but it comes with a cost, and that is the time value of money.
And I think there is a case like it's the same conversation we have when anybody asks a question about hedging. There isn't like, we're not going to give you the answer here. There isn't like, this is exactly what you should do with future betting.
Oh, of course not. No, we're going to talk about our own personal strategies.
Here are the 10 rules that you should set for, I think it does come down to everything. Like if you're, if you value your bankroll, or like, let's say you're the kind of guy who hits, let's say you're betting baseball, props, and you have an edge. It might not be a huge edge, but you're going to make money all summer. Like, let's say you're going to invest $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 into NFL futures, and you do that now. That's a chunk of your bankroll that's missing in case you have a downswing over baseball, or if let's say you're betting, and we'll go lower because it's props and maybe you can't get a lot down. Maybe you're betting 100, max is 250.
Yeah,
like it's harder to scale that up a little if a big chunk of your bankroll is tied up. And I don't know exactly how you do it. I don't have like a set number. But I know for every season, and a lot of these are not my bets I've originated. Obviously, I'm not originating hockey futures. I'm not originating baseball futures. But I know people who are, that I trust, that I bet stuff that they give out or they talk about year after year. And I just know, like, at this point, I need to have this amount of money to bet hockey futures because those are going to sit there until freaking May or, April, roughly. Same thing with baseball. I have a bunch of money tied up in baseball right now. And you just know, like, that chunk of your bankroll is set aside for that. I do a hard partition like that. And I guess it's always been fine for me because I know, like, I still have, the bankroll for this. And I'm, the thing too is when you get into this Rec Plus, or like anybody who's like got into this and as a hobby and then has started to, maybe you are networking with the Deep Dive DGens or just have figured some stuff out on your own. And you've gone from a guy who, had to put money in your account every week to a guy who had to put money in your account every month to a guy who's, over the last year, you won some money and you've made it. You're now Rec Plus. You're a winning better over a long term on whatever edge you found. Like it's hard because you have this. I think that's the biggest thing is like, let's say $10,000 bankroll. You had a nice year. You turned it into 15,000.
Sure.
It's like, do you have a $15,000 bankroll? Or do you have a $10,000 bankroll and a new grill, and a new
nice
set of irons,
nice little
and
vacation,
a vacation? It's like, what are you, how are you treating that money? Like, are you taking that out and buying yourself a green egg and a new set of irons? And what are you doing with that cash? And that's where it comes down to, like, this is kind of your decision how you treat this. But if you do want to get into this, I think if you're able to do that and say this amount of my bankroll is for futures, I mean, every year we see, like you said, these are numbers that maybe they aren't going to win, but they're going to get shorter. And what do they allow you to do when you get in season? It was a lot easy for me to put a shitload of money on Patrick Mahomes at 2-1, sitting on some of the other bets I had on for MVP. It does allow you to really overextend yourself later in the season.
You bet it does.
When something like that comes up, for sure.
Yeah. If you have Sirianni Coach of the Year that's going to pay you 5 figures and you get information that Jalen Hurts' shoulder is fucked, it makes it that much easier to bet your 10% of your bankroll on Cowboys. Okay. So, or just single games, like shoot for middles, bet on the, bet on the Saints,
bet on the Cowboys.
Saints, bet on the Cowboys, bet on the Saints. Okay. So I think that's all fair. And I mean, like, we haven't even talked about like the idea of letting your bankroll sit in your account. Like, if the halving happens with Bitcoin in March, April, like, you could have cost yourself a lot of money by locking up US dollar futures in May compared to what the value of that same bankroll would be if you just let it sit in your Bitcoin wallet all summer. So, there's definitely a lot of considerations about, what else could this money be doing for me in the meantime? You bring up a great point. Like, should I be spending it? What is my goal of even doing this? Like, I mean, I'm not going to try. I'm not realistically in this to make money to buy an island. Like, that's a joke. You're never going to make enough money to doing this to buy an island unless you're, I don't know, Tony Bloom.
It's a small island in North Dakota.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you get to the point where you're buying a soccer team or something, because we know that a lot of people that have done that through betting. But that's even. Well,
and that's you raised a good point too. Is like, what is that money doing for you? And I brought out the example of, hey, you're a sharpish kind of guy who's found some edges in baseball prop betting or low level soccer betting, and it's something that you're good at. You found an edge. You enjoy doing it. It's a hobby a little bit. But you enjoy the grind, you enjoy the research. It brings you joy to not only be right and win, but you enjoy the process of it. So, and that's not nothing. Let's say there's a bet on a player to win Rookie of the Year, MVP, something like that. A regular, let's go price only rather than a regular season win total. It could move a half game, because I think that's a different conversation. But let's say you want to put $100 in a guy at 50-1. You think this should be 20-1, and you think probably after minicamp.
I have one of those for you, by the way.
After minicamp, it might be 30-1. Well, let's take a look at the limits on some of those bets right now. Like, what if you can take that money instead and grind it and double it over the course of baseball, and then just bet it later on. Like, of course, that's if that's your prerogative, for sure, just keep that money in your bankroll, grind it through whatever you're doing over the summer, and you lose a little value, but you also have more money to maybe bet a larger stake, especially when limits go up on stuff like that.
Similarly, if you're a Rec Plus, if you're well connected, if you're in the Deep Dive Discord, I guarantee you there's going to be bad lines, bad markets up all summer long. Those guys
are so good about pointing out
right?
Stuff.
I mean, like, let's just take it for example. If you've locked up as much as you intended, if you put 50% of your bankroll to work by the time you get to 4th of July, betting game of the years, betting season win totals, betting what you name it, awards, and then somebody dinks you and says, "Hey, the WNBA All-Star Game total just opened up 40 points too high." Right? Like, that's to say, let's say, just to use an example, just to use an example, and you're like, 40? Okay, well, today's the kind of day that I'm mad that 50% of my bankroll is locked up in win totals and awards and game of the years. Like, fuck. Like, you want to put that to work in the bad, in just the wrong prices that come along as you crunch your way through the summer, grinding for fun. It's you say you handicap tennis, like, man, I want to make sure I have a decent amount of stake to get down on Djokovic at Wimbledon, the Iga at the French Open. I mean, like, I think realistically, there's certain times you want to put that money to work for you all summer long. So you got to be kind of cognizant of that, I think. And so I've gotten to the point now where if I'm making a bet in May and it's the NFL, then it better pay big. Like, I'm not interested in nibbling around the margins this time of year, or even
I think
I really don't care. Yeah,
there's two ways to look at that too. It either has to be this number is, because I'm the same way. It's just like I think this is the best. I think this is just a wrong number. I think this is going to greatly change once we have a lot more information about this player, this team, whatever.
Sure.
Or in those cases with future bets, we're talking about, for the most part, the index, the price, the VIG, if it goes from 50 to 1 down to 20 to 1 over the course of the summer. But there is a case to bet some of these win totals early if you really, really have a strong inkling that the market's going to move one way or the other. Because, there are one or two that are, and I'm not saying you should fire on 5 or 6. It's usually like there's one where it's like, this is wrong. Like this is gonna move a full game, and that might matter. That said, we've gone to the well this plenty of times in this. The average win total misses by about 2 games.
Yeah.
From what and there's plenty that land within 1 game. Every year there's one that's like, if you bet it then you'd have lost. You bet it now you'd have won. Like there's gonna be one of those, and so I would say out of anything, like the hierarchy of what's available, and let's just stick to NFL, like awards, long futures, like long shot bombs is what I'd be betting right now. I have stayed away from regular season win total stuff this early for the most part. I'm willing to give up a little bit of value on some of the prices just to get a lot more information. And I've been fine with that. Like, a couple years ago, I bet the Cowboys over 9.5 wins.
Yeah.
The day after the Super Bowl, that closed like 10. Pretty juicy. It was like 10 minus 150 it closed, maybe even 10.5.
Sure.
And then everybody got hurt. They won like 7 games or some shit.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best bet in the world is just gonna, and then also that's the worst one to look at in your account. It's like, I bet this in February. The Cowboys are dead. This is thing, and the Jags division winner. If you think that thing is gonna stretch out to minus 200 once we find out a little more about the plans, like. It's not saying it's not a bad investment.
Yeah, I mean it's a plus EV bet, but it's not for me. Sorry. Like you have to lock down. You have to lock down a big old chunk. Yeah, you have to lock down a big old chunk, and you're not getting a huge swing to the good. So I don't really care. I really don't. The other reason I will bet something this early. Yeah.
The only other reason I will bet something this early is just because I'm jonesing to bet on something.
Oh, sure. That's different.
Like I made a futures bet last week just because.
Yeah, if you're donking on a couple here and there just because you're like, yeah, I like this. This is fun. Get the juices going. That I don't really care. But I mean, that's fine. But for me, at least, like I'm not going to sit down and make win total numbers and be like, can you believe this is off by 1.5 wins? This is the best bet I'm going to make all year. No, it's not. Don't even know
the full roster or the schedule.
It's really not worth it. And honestly, like that's the other thing that's kind of funny is like you do content about NFL all summer long. Like that's the easiest thing in the world. Like, because you get the sense like, well, the Jags was a great example. Like, first thing that people were asking as the Super Bowl's over and then the markets go up for the next year, what do you like? And I'm like, well, Jags to win the South. I mean, the other 3 teams are going to be starting rookie quarterbacks. So
Jags parlayed with whatever.
Yeah, Jags wins that. I mean, and I do think that probably will close minus 200, maybe minus 250. We'll see. But again, like knowing that it's going to go from minus 120 to minus 250. I'm still not going to do it because it's just you have to lock up way too much liquidity for way too long, and there's still downside variance that can sting you with that stuff. So, for those reasons, the only bets that I really looked at when it comes to I look at the win total numbers. Surely, kind of make
for sure
go through.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I think that's an over, that's an under, that's a pass, that's an over, that's an under, that's a pass. Kind of go through that exercise for sure, just to kind of get a sense of where the market is now. Check in on where your opinion was, in June, July, see what's changed, how much it's moved. Did it move in the direction? Was your intuition right? Like, what inspired the moves? Like, holy shit, this moved a game. What was they didn't sign anyone, they didn't cut anyone. Like, why in the world would that happen? Like, kind of going through that exercise is valuable. But I'm not really locking up capital.
But I think the same goes for the awards markets.
Sure.
And the futures markets, whether it be the division, the conference, the Super Bowl, obviously there's a pretty linear relationship between that and win totals. And obviously the win totals and the people that are in your division, but it's probably good to sit and just look at the rookie of the year odds, the coach of the year odds, and just kind of think about it a little. Keep your, keep it on your mind as far as, it's the same thing we said. And I hate to bring up the draft because it's not like the draft did well this year. Just the teams that had the right picks didn't have any leaks and fucking sucked. We'll be right back there next year trying to figure it out. But it's the same thing I said about the draft is like, when something does leak, you need to know what the market's like. You need to have it just at kind of in the front of your brain, like knowing the market sentiment right now about like, who are the favorites in this market, who's which teams are getting steam, like you said, understanding what news has been pushing certain teams up one way or the other.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would also say that my process, at least now in May, for the longer, try to catch some longer shots. I'll pull up all the award markets and AFC, NFC, Super Bowl market. And if there's anything above 30-1 that I think is going to meaningfully shorten for any reason, I'll fire that now. No doubt about it. Like you really don't need much of a good reason not to bet those now, just because limits are what they are, right? If you're gonna click into to win 5K type of bets at a bookmaker or a bet online, like you're not really allocating a ton of capital if the price is 50-1. You're not. Is
your big price one Matthew Judon?
No, that's interesting. But I don't think
that's one I looked at for defensive player of the year.
Okay.
Because I hate to get into the market stuff because like you look at the top of the board, Watt, Parsons, Garrett, Bosa, Crosby. There's some big names, but like Matthew Judon puts up numbers. He was like 50. Like that's kind of the example. It's like, man, is this a guy that halfway through the season is kind of in the handful of top players all of a sudden because of some sort of narratives, and like, yeah, I can kind of see it with Judon.
Sure. Let me see what my number is on the one that I like, so I can tell you for sure.
Which market was it? And let me guess.
It was. Let me see if it moved. Oh man.
Which market was it?
It's already moved a lot, so apologies.
What market was it?
Comeback player of the year.
I mean, was it just Damar Hamlin?
No. I think comeback player of the year. So basically, why I gravitated to that market to bet now, the Bills conducted their offseason like they're not going to play Hamlin meaningful minutes. Like I get the sense that what's going to happen is he'll get some ceremonial 1 to 5
snaps. Horse you got to play against.
Yeah, he's going to get some ceremonial snaps. People will scream and cheer, but I don't think that the Bills have the stomach to put him out there for a full campaign. And I think by the time we get to the end of the season, it's going to be pretty much forgotten. So I think he's a bet against in the comeback player of the year market, and I think those prices are wrong. And I didn't
mind looking at just because the media hype built in already around how good he was to start his career. Like it's hard maybe to win it so early, but Breece Hall's number is probably a little long.
Okay.
Because he was very good.
I'll just jump right to nobody's guessing it in the chat. You're off on Breece Hall, I think. Just because there's so many mouths to feed.
There are, but fuck, like I think he's gonna feast with a good quarterback.
Okay.
He's like a pass catcher. I'm very curious. Please don't say Baker or something weird.
Something weird. Sam Darnold was 50-1. And the major disconnect between Sam Darnold 50-1 for comeback player of the year and the Niners being effectively co-favorites for the NFC. I can't square that. You can't square it.
That's why I didn't even look at it. He's like third favorite.
Now he is, yeah. Now he is. Sorry, guys. He was 50 to 1 less than 48 hours ago.
That checks out. Just because my worry is like he just doesn't play the whole year.
Well, it's possible, sure, but at the same time, like one of these two is wrong. Either comeback play of the year 50 to 1 is wrong, or Niners 3 to 1 to win the NFC is wrong, because Sammy Darnold is under center for the first half of the year at a minimum, while Brock Purdy recovers from Tommy John. And I mean, realistically, like he's keeping the seat warm for Brock Purdy, presumably for the 2024 campaign. I don't think Purdy's going to start just because I think realistically,
very bimodal distribution of odds. Once we get to like week 3, Sam Darnold is either second favorite for a comeback player of the year, or
he's not on a squad.
200 to 1. Or something.
He's not on a team. One of the two. He's not on a team.
It's just full on. Do you remember that third week of him in Carolina? Like the first couple weeks, we were excited about it. Like, hey, this is all right against bad teams. And then it's like, oh no, the wheels fell off. Which,
do you remember who his coach was?
I was just gonna say we're going to a situation where we're able to take a guy drafted in the 7th round and essentially take him, and he was able to lead a team to the NFC title game. And they might have won that game if they had a quarterback at the end of it.
Yeah,
I mean, they've said that. So
yeah.
Honestly, I don't hate the look. And a couple people, like we said,
you can find it at DK. You can find it at 365. Okay. I don't need to get into a detailed handicap here, other than to tell you that if he clicks with Shanahan, and by all accounts, like people like what they've seen from him so far in a Niners uniform. The general vibe in the Bay is very, Sam Darnold can hold this thing down. I mean, honestly, just them putting out that they were looking for suitors for Trey Lance should tell you something. That they're going into this season with, this is Sam Darnold's season. The fact that last year Geno Smith had his reclamation campaign result in a comeback play of the year award, I think there's now kind of a little bit of a mental model for people who are voting this award. Like, what do we do with this again? Oh yeah, we vote for some quarterback.
What's gonna be funny is like Darnold's gonna push to like plus 150. And then Trey Lance is going to come back and have the same, we're going to have 2 comeback player of the year narratives on the same team.
I don't have inside information on this, but my spidey sense is telling me that Trey Lance is not long for that squad.
Lance, it's either he comes back in like week 9, or it feels like it's, once you get towards.
You're talking about Purdy, right?
I thought, excuse me, Purdy. Like, what's Purdy's timeline?
Purdy's timeline realistically is like November, December, as far as I can tell you.
Okay.
It was complicated getting that TJ fixed. I think realistically it's going to be December. And honestly, at that point, can you really take the ball out of Sam Darnold's hands if he's like 11-2 and sitting in the 1 seed for the NFC? You can't, can you?
Probably, because it probably wasn't his doing.
Well, no, but like they stuck with Purdy, who was 7-0 or whatever. Like they didn't even try to bring Jimmy G back into the picture to play in the playoffs. They were like, we're gonna go to war with Purdy. He's our guy. And honestly, like with Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams anchoring an offensive line, like that offense is going to be probably fine. This is probably the best situation that Sam Darnold's ever been in. And Kyle Shanahan,
he has to be so excited.
Oh yeah, of course.
Like who's the real winner?
He literally can look at what Geno Smith did last year and be like, holy shit, I can do this. And honestly, if the Niners love Brock Purdy and this is keeping the seat warm for him, like they can let Sam Darnold walk after this year and get some kind of awesome comp, probably, if he goes and signs a deal somewhere else, or they keep him around as like the longtime backup for Purdy. Who the hell knows? Whatever the case is, 50 to 1 did not jive at all with the current prices for San Francisco to win the NFC, in my opinion. So I grabbed as much as I could at 50 to 1, and now it's 10 to 1 at Bet Online. And I think if you want to look for other shops that have a big old number, then I would say go for it. Shanny just wins Coach of the Year, Patrick. That was my first kind of.
That was the first bet I made this year.
Well, it wasn't my first bet I made this year, but that was my first kind of instinct when I kind of thought through like who's starting. is it really going to be Darnold? Like, holy shit, if they actually do this, then Shaney's a shoo-in for coach of the year. And then I'm like, you know what? He did it with Brock Purdy last year and Jimmy G, and they didn't, they still found another way to not give it to him.
We didn't have a history on Purdy. It was just like,
and
I know he was Mr. Irrelevant, but people right away said, well, I mean, Tom Brady was drafted late and we just don't know. And people don't know. People don't make the quarterback evaluation process is so difficult. Sometimes guys fall and they're good. We've seen, obviously Tom Brady, probably the best of all time. He was 6th round pick. Like this sort of shit happens where I think there is a pretty good narrative around like, hey, Sam Darnold sucks shit.
Yeah.
Like this guy was terrible. There's the meme. He went to he's been multiple places and hasn't been good. Yeah. And that the handicap, and I don't mean handicap in the way that we usually use it, but like the handicap against that's holding Shanahan coach of the year back is the fact that the regular season win total will be high. The expectations are high. They're favorites doing that's what holds it back. But if he's able to do it, the narrative is like, oh my God, he fixed a terrible quarterback. And they're like you said, 11-1, he should be in the conversation because he was last year.
You know what the other problem though is, Andy?
What?
He's 16-1 to win coach of the year.
There's still 30s if you hunt.
Are there? Okay. Well, 50. I'll take Sam Darnold in 30 to 60. I'll take 50 or 60 on Sam Darnold over coach of the year, Shanny, even up to 30, honestly.
Have 15 books for a reason, guys. Because it's one thing where it's like, oh, I got -3 plus 100 rather than everybody else is paying -120 for it, plus 100 or even money, however you want to say it. Yeah, that's nice, but man, in the awards markets, the prices are all over the fucking place.
Surely. All right. So
we just said it's 10-1 on Bet Online and 60 in some legals.
Yeah. So the long way around this entire conversation we're having about the Niners is if you see a potential misprice in the market, and you're like, what do we do with this? Like, and we could be wrong. Like the Niners 3-1 to win the NFC could be the bust. Right? Like ultimately they're changing D coordinators. There's turnover on that roster. Some guys are getting old. Like, it could go side. Sam Darnold might suck shit. Like that's entirely possible. Like this is this is not under, that could be what is wrong here. But if you're going through prices and things don't add up and you got to figure out what do I do with this? Like, if you're like, oh, you know what? Niners at 10.5 ought to be 11. You know what? Sam Darnold at 50-1 ought to be 10. Like, give me the latter. Absolutely. Every single time. Right.
And the thing is, we're having the same conversation that we've had in years past around win totals. Is like, and I've already referenced it once this episode, the average win total, the expectation, whatever the market expectation and the actual results on average is 2 games difference.
Yes.
Between, and you ran that for several years. We'll run it again. We'll look at it. But I don't expect the results to be like, oh, it was a lot tighter last year and whatever. That's a small sample. Yeah. But
usually around 8 to 10 teams fall within 1.
Yeah.
The rest fall outside, which is crazy.
3, 4, 5, 6 games off. I mean,
crazy.
I believe the Eagles and the Giants were 5 or 6 games above their win total. And there's several teams are going to go 5, 6 above. Somebody's going to lose a quarterback, go 4 or 5 below. Sure. Like that happens every year. And yes, Matthew in the chat, regular season win total alts. Like we always make a case for alts. Like if you're going to really invest in a team, you believe these numbers are wrong. You believe there's a really long tail, like all of us in here. I mean, I don't want to just take credit for me and Drew. Like everybody in the chat was with us on the Eagles. And it wasn't just because we said so. Like you guys had a lot of good points about the Eagles. And, a lot of people made Eagles, last undefeated, Eagles most wins, Eagles when they won. I'm not sure 1 seed was an option. It was just like most wins, Eagles win the NFC, a lot of bets like that. If you really believe in a team, you should be taking alts. And I mean, taking Sam Darnold is just kind of a different way to take an alt. Like
exactly.
You're
That's
saying
exactly
like, hey,
what it is. And honestly,
same thing.
Yes. Going back to the Eagles, I'm so glad you brought that up because I was going to go there. Like when you stumble up, like I was tilted because the day we did the Eagles, I was behind the entire, huge amount of steam in the win total market. Like it had already moved an entire win and then juiced. And I was like looking at the schedule, doing the math, and I'm like, holy shit, like these guys are going to romp in a weak NFC. And what do we do with that information? We found 20 to 1s for them to have the most wins in the NFC. Found 20 to 1s on coach of the year for Nick Sirianni. Like those are, kind of more exotic ways that I think you put I think basically the long end of the story is like just shoot for the stuff that's priced like it's 5% to happen that you think is like 10 because that's capturing the long tail stuff locks up less bankroll, and it and realistically like gives you so much more flexibility down the line to play into the market in other ways, to play into game by game markets other ways. Like this is really the moral of the entire last 2 years doing this for me.
I hate to bring up losers, but it was another one that it was a really good shout because a big part of the award markets is the uncertainty, and especially the rookie award markets, the uncertainty of usage, because you have to have the numbers, you have to have the hype, you have to have the media hype. The wins are also a bonus, especially if you're a quarterback, that helps. But you really, really need the usage. Like, and that's the biggest thing you're guessing at early in the year is like usage. And I know it didn't turn out, to be one of the favorites deep into the season, but there were times where it was looking like this is a thing, and people got Romeo Dubs at like a huge number, like a 3-digit number for a guy who ended up being, one of the main targets for chunks of the season. Like that's the kind of uncertainty you chase because, let's say you're betting, and I hate to pick on the Jaguars thing because it's probably a really good bet, but if you want to bet the, let's just say $10,000 bankroll, if you want to be betting on the Jaguars, like you need to put a big chunk down on that. Yeah. Whereas you're betting, it'll look like, hey, we're putting $500 on that. 5% of your bankroll's going on Jaguars. 600 to win 500 minus 120. Whereas if you're betting Romeo Dubs at 100 to 1, and I know that was last year, probably not tying up as much bankroll. And like you said, it offers you a lot more flexibility to bet into other rookie of the year markets. I didn't take a really long one. I just have kind of been dabbling, but it's one of those too. And we've done this, but it's always been closer to the season. We bet, God, who was Chase Young? It was only like 3 or 4 to 1, but it was just like, hey, his usage is starter, and he's going to be, with some other decent players, and he probably just wins this. Like sometimes there's a case, but again, we weren't making that bet in May. That's for certain. It was more of this is 3 or 4 to 1. It should be even money kind of thing.
Yeah. 100%.
Zappy rookie of the year. Yeah, my heart rate got going for like 2 drives there. That was fun. We made a huge number on that.
Yeah, but at the same, yeah. So I don't know. I still think shooting for stuff that's priced like it's 2% win prob. That should be like closer to 5 or 10. Like that EV to me is more valuable this time of year than any of the stuff around division winners, any of the stuff around win totals. So be creative, lock in stuff that has higher scores with lower bankroll committed, lower capital allocation. Now that's kind of the name of the game for me in May, and this is lessons learned after like 2 or 3 years doing this. So. Anyway,
no, and it's true, and I will bet some stuff that's not as long, and I'll bet some 10 to 1s here. Just it's like, hey, I really do think once we get to camp, I think both rookie of the year markets are a good example of you're just trying to grab stuff where you think this is going to be wildly different come summer because of the knowledge that the market's going to gain by then, and a lot of it for rookie of the year is like, hey. There's like 3 guys ahead of it. Let's go defense. There's 3 guys ahead of this guy that aren't really going to play. They're great. They got drafted high, but they're absolutely going to be rotational because
of course, yeah.
That's just the nature of, let's say, defensive line, or, this guy doesn't have a good partner across him if he's a corner and he's a rookie, and he either is a god and that works, or he's a rookie cornerback and he gets feasted on because it's a weak secondary in general. That's why they took him. Yeah. Like the Sauce Gardner thing is an outlier. That does not happen that often. And maybe I'm dead wrong, and we'll go back to
I don't think you.
I think everything evolves, though. I think we have seen defensive backs. There was, Woolen, Stingley, like we've seen defensive backs get acclimated quicker more recently, but I think, again, it depends on the situation. It depends on the usage, and they have to be able to put up some stats. So looking at that for both offensive and rookie and defensive rookie of the years, it's just a fun exercise too. That's
no doubt.
Honestly, like we talked about, it's a hobby. You enjoy the grind. Like that's the funnest part of this whole thing is just looking into that.
Well, let me propose you another question then. So we talked about, or I made some pretty declarative statements of Jags AFC South. I think closes in the -200 range.
Parlay
minus 250, right?
Yeah.
Well, you can put, that's actually not crazy. You could definitely secret to, and if I spoil this for people, I sincerely apologize. I do not think that the people that matter listen to this podcast, so I will say it out loud.
Wow.
What?
It's hurtful to the listeners.
No. I'm saying the people that could spoil this. Okay. If you want to bet on Sam Darnold, comeback player of the year at FanDuel, for instance, and they're like, okay, we'll write you $200 on that to win 10,000 or whatever. And you're like, damn, I really wanted to write, like, I really wanted to bet 500 on that to win, $25,000, right? If you parlay it with high likelihood legs, like,
your limit goes up.
The limit goes up. Every leg
you pick a boxing match that's like minus 6,600.
Yes.
And suddenly like, I can bet 100 on this. You parlay it with that boxing match and it goes up. Now I can bet 189.
Yes. You know how much trouble I'm going to be in if Connor McDavid doesn't win the Hart? I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. That was I was putting that to work in a lot of ways when I was in a hotel in Chicago, but, trying to figure this out for the first time. They, for whatever reason, like putting giant donkey legs into these parlays makes you look like a less skilled bettor, and the staking goes up. So you can absolutely get more down, weirdly. But okay, let's put all that aside. Go back to the Jags to win the South argument. -120-ish right now. Is that what it is right now, or is it already moved?
-150.
-150? Okay. -150 right now. If we're saying it's going to go to -250 by the time week 1 kicks off, are you better off laying it? Let's say we want to win 10K on this. Are you better off laying, 15K now to win 10K in December? Or should I go to their Super Bowl odds where I can get in one click, lay 350 to win 10K at plus 2850, right? Which of these two makes more sense to you? Because obviously the capital allocation is the huge factor here. But even more than that, like, this price is going to get, if they win the AFC South, they're going to have a home game.
Yeah.
If they win the AFC, they're probably going to be favored in the Super Bowl just because of the imbalance of conference strength.
Darnold?
So here's where, what makes more sense to you? Allocating 15K of your bankroll to win 10K today, or allocating 350 to win 10K in the Super Bowl, recognizing that you're going to have to do some work to get to realize, or actually maybe we just go hit the limit, allocate 1,000 to win 30, and recognizing that we're going to be able to get 10K out of that if they're in the playoffs and have a home game and win in round 1.
Yeah. The second one does make more sense. The first one is a lot less. If you don't like to have to, what was with Purdue actively manage the bet? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So here's the other kind of key aspect. You ready for this? The thesis of why the Jags make such a good bet for the South is the fact that the other teams are all starting rookies, probably, or at least will play rookies for a huge balance of the season outside of maybe Tennessee, right? What does that do for the Jaguars in an otherwise very competitive AFC, besides give them potential to get a higher seed?
Yeah,
maybe even a bye. 1 or a 2 seed potentially for the Jags, I think, is on the table just because they're in the only weak division and they get 6 games against the Texans, Colts, and they have 4 games against Anthony Richardson and CJ Stroud, for fuck's sake.
It's like the Bills, division got tougher.
The Bills division got tougher.
We always talk about the Chiefs division.
The Chargers and Chiefs are going to freaking bloody each other up.
Yeah. There's a decent chance the Jags are fighting for at least a 2 seed. I 1 seed's a tough. If you gave me a number on it, I'd probably bet into that because I like that a lot.
AFC North is nasty too, man. You
think
those guys aren't going to black and blue each other up?
Well, and Cincinnati truly is due for some weird regression on a few things.
Yeah.
Like they either like Zach is just that much better of a coach and he's like a quiet, sneaky genius, which I'm not willing to totally say that ever.
Okay.
Or
for the purposes,
Cincinnati's falling back.
So
them being a high seed is kind of the long tail for me.
Okay. For the purposes of this exercise, I'm betting it right now. Jags to win the Super Bowl. And we'll see if I can get my 10K out of this without having to allocate 15K to do it.
We'll come back to this. It is too. Like Patrick says, he says I'd still lay the juice. It's all bankroll dependent. And that's too. If you don't want to have to manage it in the playoffs, you just want to. Not only that, but so in your situation, there's a decent chance you're allocating more bankroll towards this come, divisional weekend. Whereas Patrick, who tied up money from here through, let's say December, actually has a bunch of winnings he's taking and allocating on the playoffs instead.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, if you truly believe they do win this division, then that money can work for you come playoff time rather than you having to allocate extra money. Although allocating that extra money is, in a spot where you might be in a no risk situation or a middling position, you don't feel so bad having to lay a bunch of money if you're sitting on a big middle.
Yeah. So here's 2 predictions for you. Ready? Number 1, the -150 for the South is going to get higher between now and the week 1 kicking off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I think we are going to see a local high potentially at that point. Right? There's kind of only downside risk to laying 250 at the week 1 window, right?
Yeah.
They could start slow. They could lose week 1. We don't know what the schedule is, but they could lose week 1 to the Titans or something. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, there's now -150 back. We didn't get anything out of that. I think realistically, smaller allocation, less risk involved now. The value that you can re-enter that AFC South at a better price potentially during the season if there's any downside at all, and you still want it, right?
We did and truthfully, we did get one good piece of news. One of their toughest matchups will be a neutral site rather than neutral site where they have a travel advantage.
They'll have been acclimated for a week. That's absolutely that's non-trivial. Shit, man. I didn't even think of that.
It was kind of a big deal for the Jags.
That's a huge deal.
That, I'm like, oh, who are they playing in their second game? I'm like, oh, that's nice.
That's really nice.
Yeah. To conclude, there's no wrong way or right way. I think the point we're trying to push is just think about what's right for you.
Yeah, of course.
For sure. That's the answer. These assholes on Twitter, and there's some people that really get up in their ivory towers and want to tell you how to do stuff. Unless it's the math, there's no right way or wrong way. Do you try to get smarter, and then it's the same thing you should do every week when you're making bets and you lose, because you will lose bets every week if you bet enough.
Yeah.
Is doing your autopsy on what went wrong. Even if you made a bet and you won it and you got a horrible number, evaluating your market entry, you should always be be retrospective, be introspective about all this stuff you're doing. And the same thing, Drew, without even, kind of coming to the same point, has already said it. You've said this multiple times, Drew. You said over the years, I've come to these conclusions, and what's right for you is, and you've learned from it, and you've become better at allocating your bankroll on stuff like this because of lessons you've learned.
There was one other wrinkle I wanted to bring up. Okay. And this is halfway hypothetical, but I think it's a good way to make this point. You ready? Even beyond just taking a stand on a team and let's say this works both ways, but I'm going to use my example of, I think this team is going to be better than the market thinks this minute. right? There are better ways to capitalize for certain teams depending on the velocity at which the market reacts to the results as they come in. Okay, this is a weird concept, I know, but certain teams have much, much higher elasticity in terms of market response to performing well. Okay, great example. The best example I can give you is if you believe that the Falcons will be ultimately much better this year than the market, because the market right now doesn't really make much of the Falcons. But if you were like, wow, I really like their additions. I like you got a young running back now in an all-world offensive, running system. Like, this team is in the weakest division in sports. Okay, I like the Falcons this year. They are still quarterbacked by Desmond Ridder. If they impress you week 1 against the Panthers, a lot of people are going to be like, man, it was the Panthers. It's Bryce Young's first start, whatever. Yeah. Like, there's not going to be a big adjustment to them to the good if they beat the Panthers. They could play the Saints and beat the Saints the next week and be like, yeah, I mean, and Andy Dalton on the road, whatever. Who is the Saints guy now? Derek Carr on the road, whatever. Yeah, Derek Carr on the road, whatever. Same person. You realistically, there could be 2 or 3 games beginning of the season where the market just is like, no, I am not believing these guys are good. This happened with the Seahawks last year, very, very obviously, right? It took to week 8, and when the Seahawks were actually kind of cooling off before they were getting any kind of market respect, maybe even later in the season. I don't even remember. It was forever. It took forever for the Seahawks to get respect. So there are certain teams where the opinion of the quarterback is so low, and just in general, the market will resist heavily upgrading them. There are other teams, and I will use the Rams as an example here, where you can say, you know what? People are kind of underrating that Stafford's 100% healthy right now, and Cooper Kupp is coming back, and the offensive line will probably be better, and Aaron Donald is still playing.
Last time Stafford was super healthy, he was playing in Athens, man.
Yeah.
Last time, might matter.
Last time he was, you're right. He's probably healthier than he was when he won a fucking Super Bowl. Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah. So anyway, you could say okay, I think the Rams are going to be better than the market rates them right now, because right now the market rates the Rams as absolute dog shit. And if you think they're going to be better than their rating, you kind of have to take a bigger swing on a futures play than expect that you're going to be able to go week by week on this. Okay.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is it will take 1 week of Stafford and Kupp and Sean McVay and Aaron Donald shredding whoever their week 1 opponent is. It could even be the lowly piece of shit Cardinals. It will take 1 week for people to be like, oh yeah, that's the Super Bowl Rams. They need to be, they shouldn't be a -4. They should be a +2.
That's another comeback. Yeah. That's going to be annoying because I don't think he wins it, but that's one that's been eating at me for comeback player of the year. It's Kupp's going to get some steam in this market because he's going to have some good games, and it's going to be annoying with all the other tickets you'll have in that one for sure. Yeah. No, I mean, you're right. Everyone's going to be quick to be, because they have the anchoring of, oh, this team won a Super Bowl. Oh, Kupp was offensive player of the year. Oh shit. They were just broken last year, and we're back. Yeah. We're back, baby.
Stafford was what did Stafford close MVP? 10, 12 to 1, something like that last year. If that guy shows up, then, the market is going to snap their fingers and they're going to go from a -4 to a +2.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I personally I'm not super afraid of the Rams picking my pocket in any of the awards markets this year, because I still need to see Stafford play a full season healthy as opposed to just starting a season healthy. But what I'm getting at basically is, if you think you can go week in, week out and bet the Rams through the first 4 weeks of the season and get plus EV every one of those weeks, I got bad news for you. It's not going to happen. As soon as they look good, there's going to be a big adjustment, when the opposite is probably true for the likes of the Falcons. Does that make sense? So, in addition to kind of coming up with a thesis,
I think just like what you said, understanding how the market reacts to different types of teams, where there is and the Seahawks are such a good example. We haven't had that good of an example for many years.
A while.
But it's been a while. Because what was our anchoring point with that team? Hey, and I've said this about 2 quarterbacks now. Geno Smith sucks shit. Not only that, it's not just hey, this is his 3rd year and he's been he's been in the league for a while. We've seen him get multiple chances. He's never been good. this is a mirage. We're seeing, this team isn't that good. It's been a team that's been a little backwards on analytics. It's been a team that's wanting to run a little too much, even, if it doesn't have the right running backs. It's a team that maybe misuses their offense, and the defense was bad last year. And then it's like, oh, okay, like, what was it? 7? It was like week 7 or 8 before the market's like, shit, they nailed the draft, and Geno kind of gets it here with Waldron. And like things are kind of clicking. Like this is actually a team that is above average at this point. And it took so long. Whereas like you said, if there's a team that underperformed last year due to injuries, and I think maybe the Niners are a good example of that last year, where it's like the year before and the year before that, they had so many injuries that kind of held them back. But once they got going, it's like, oh, Debo's a stud. And they have Bosa, and like we have all these other players. What we have a good secondary, and if they're healthy, it's like the market's like, Pied Piper. Like we're fully willing to follow this team into war right now. Like they win 2 games in a row, that's it. We're good.
The best example for the other way around last year, I think, was actually probably Philadelphia, because they were a buzzy team.
Well, I mean, they were buzzy by like June.
They were a buzzy team all summer, right? And they ultimately win comfortably, but didn't cover against the Lions. And then they had their prove it game in primetime on Monday night against the Vikings. They were 2.5-point favorites at home. They destroyed the Vikings, even though the final margin was only 24-7.
I mean, the game was over at halftime.
They beat them to death. And then by week 3, they opened up as 6-point favorites on the road in division. So that adjustment between week 2 and week 3 was probably one of the most volatile. Price went up, and then it never came back down. Right, that went one way, and then you basically never really got a plus EV bet on the You never really got a plus EV bet on the Eagles again all year, from what I can tell. It's the Dallas game. No, they were 6.5 point. Well, I guess that was against Cooper Rush.
It got weird. The last 3-4 weeks kind of got weird.
Yeah. No, I meant like Dallas week 6. They were 6.5 point favorites at home but it was against Cooper Rush. They were 10.5 point favorites against Pittsburgh at home, 13.5 on the road. Like, so it took kind of a while before you got a plus EV bet again on them. And I think it was shit, man. I don't know.
I don't know. We bet the Cowboys. I think we actually both sides of that game.
I think then the next plus EV bet you get on them was in the playoffs against the Giants, is 7.5 point favorites coming off the bye. Like the adjustment was so aggressive and so correct, and then there really wasn't a good bet to be made on the.
Another good point by Holt here too. The Bucks power rating in the market
that's the other way around.
That's a great call.
Great one. Yeah. No.
I mean, it is. We talk about we use the word market so much, and it is similar to the financial markets too, where it's like everybody knows this company is a dog, and everybody knows things are going bad, and everybody knows the earnings report is going to suck, but they have a big name, and it's a company that's been around for 100 years, and it's a CEO we trust, and that price just holds on, and people who are shorting it cannot understand what's going on. Like the stock needs to go down, and there's just this market resistance because the inherent trust.
Yeah, I mean, I was part of the mess against the Cowboys at home in playoffs. I lived that vociferously. But yeah, no, the opposite is true for sure. When you have a known, that Bucks team was all known quantities, all blue chip names, 2 years removed from a Super Bowl.
Bad coaching
and regression in terms of quality of play out of the quarterback, and everybody was kind of hurt, and the offensive line wasn't there. So there were reasons to believe the Bucks weren't going to be as good as they said. And if you kind of held your convictions there, you were, what you were better off doing, Andy, God, instead of playing
for football now.
I fucked this up, and I admit it. I was like, look, the Bucks are a fade. I'm going to take a long shot on the Saints to win the AFC South, because I don't think the Bucks are going to be as good. That was a losing bet. That was wasted capital. You know what I would have been better doing? Just betting against the Bucks every single week until the bitter end, because the market never truly corrected them to what their fair price was last season.
We talk about big prices being worth grabbing too. Here's one that I just can't. I just can't see. Patrick says Todd Bowles, coach of the year, prices highest on the board.
What defense might be fine, but
what narrative? What narrative gets them like? Oh, you had an 8-win season, you won the division. It's still no thanks. Some of those prices are big for a reason.
Who's the OC there now? Dave Canales.
I was going to say I don't know who took left.
Dave Canales and Baker Mayfield teaming up to win the NFC South. I don't know, man.
Yeah, have fun.
He was the Seahawks quarterback coach last year, for what it's worth. So yeah, there are some teams where people expect them to be bad, or there's buzz that they're going to be bad, and if they suck early, the adjustment down will be aggressive, and you won't be able to bet them under. You won't be able to bet against them consistently, and then the opposite is true, where you have a team where there's a pretty aggressive, heavily defended anchor point on them being good, and if they suck, then you could just go at them every week. You want to guess what the against the spread record was for the Buccaneers last year?
Oh gosh, 7-10.
4-13.
I was gonna say 4, and I'm like, oh, that's too far, Andy.
They covered week 1 against Dallas, and in a game where Dak Prescott got hurt. They covered week 2 against the New Orleans Saints, and I think Andy Dalton, and then they covered 2 games the remainder of the season.
Patrick's got the kid juju too. The kid's favorite team has always been the Falcons.
Oh, good.
It's never worked for Kelly. Like his kid's favorite team is the Penguins. I'm just the end of every podcast is just dog on Kelly.
Just strays. Just Kelly catching strays.
Just to make sure he's listening.
Like, a tradition like
his
like
kid
many
likes
others.
Penguins and
better than liking the Maple Leafs. I mean,
well, they're winning. They're
Oh, are they?
Well, I mean now it's 2-0. I think they probably get this one done.
Okay. Panthers a little choke at home, trying to close the door.
Nerve-wracking times for thing. I would have liked Miami to play a little better tonight.
Okay. All right, man.
Yeah, if there's any other questions, I have figured out how to put Discord on my telephone.
Yes.
So like tag me. I think I have it where it'll just like pop up if you tag me. If you have something, if you listen to this late, you didn't get it in live like some of the guys did, and you had a good point you wanted to talk about, ping me, because I'm just gonna be watching golf for the rest of the week, man.
I love it, man. Who's your horse in the Byron Nelson?
Don't love it this week. I took some numbers before the Spieth withdrawal, so I got decent numbers. But like Matt Kuchar, like I'm not excited about anything. I'm mostly matchups and top 20s. Top 20s are kind of my jam now. I've enjoyed that.
I'm about ready to call it round 2 of the NBA playoffs, and I'm way in the weeds right now with tennis. This is like we're coming around the final turn, Andy. Clay season is winding into the home stretch. A French Open is going to be awesome. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
Lakers Warriors, I don't think it's bettable anymore. I played the under when it was like 227. It's going to close at like 220. It looks like that is a wild market, a misprice there. Whew.
And it got steamed up. It got steamed up the other night, and then didn't even come close.
That was my favorite. That was my second favorite playoff game so far this year.
Yeah, I bet my top 20 is Montgomery, Hoagie, Jagger, and Wu. Dylan Wu is kind of my jam. I bet into him in a couple matchups last weekend. It's just no respect from Dylan Wu is, the 2022 Seattle Seahawks playing good golf, getting no respect from the market.
I like it. Is this year's Tom Kim? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I just make sure there's a Brandon Wu too, so I got to keep them straight. It's a whole thing. Both of them are playing. So Dylan, not Brandon. No relation.
All right. Well, let's put a bow on this.
Yeah,
Dan, thank you as always for producing. Chat, thank you as always for helping us with our content. We appreciate you. And
Florida got one back. Win the team previews. Matthew
jinxed them.
I want Toronto to lose. I hate Canada. No offense, but I don't hate Canada. This could be the 30th consecutive Stanley Cup for the United States.
Oh, nice.
Dan, you see how fast I was with the math, Dan?
Yeah. If we need Edmonton now too, though, yeah.
Yeah, I have two foes to fight right now, Edmonton and Toronto, but they're both,
okay,
liable to lose. And then I was gonna say real quick too. God damn it, what was I gonna say? Oh,
previews start July 12th.
Previews start, right after the 4th of July is usually when we fire into those.
Yeah, we're gonna handicap the entire Women's World Cup correctly the week of the 4th of July, and then we start NFL previews.
I will bet every single Women's World Cup match again. That's my favorite thing to do during the summer. Let's go, USA again. That's something. I wonder if Circa has the futures up for Women's World Cup, because they have that market, USA versus Canada, which country will have the winning team for the Stanley Cup. I parlay that with the